So, back in 2023, the South African Springboks pulled off something incredible. They became Rugby World Cup champions. But what's fascinating is that behind all the celebrations, there was this hidden strategic problem, a problem that actually teaches us a huge lesson about success, not just in sports, but, well, in pretty much anything. Let's dig into what that problem was and why it's so important. I know, it sounds crazy, right? How can winning possibly be a problem? You've just reached the absolute pinnacle of your field. But what if I told you that that very victory was actually a giant red flag? What if winning was just hiding a much, much bigger weakness? That's the paradox we're going to unpack. Okay, so to really get this, you have to look at how they won. Because this wasn't some dominant, unstoppable march to victory. No, this was more like a terrifying tightrope walk across a canyon, in the wind. And it all comes down to this one number. Just one. And honestly, it tells you pretty much the entire story. One was the difference between being crowned champions of the world and going home with nothing. Not just in one game, but in every single one of their knockout matches. And just look at this. I mean, the brutal reality is laid bare right here. Against France in the quarterfinal, a 1-point win. Against England in the semifinal, a 1-point win. And then in the final, against their biggest rivals, New Zealand, you guessed it, a 1-point win. They are the first team in history to ever do that, which sounds amazing, right? But it also tells you just how dangerously close they were to losing it all. You know, in the world of business strategy, there's a term for this. It's called a red ocean. Think of it as a market that's so crowded, so bloody with competition, that everyone's just fighting for scraps, for inches. The margins are razor thin. And the Springboks, well, they weren't just winning. They were barely surviving in the deepest, reddest ocean you can imagine. Okay, so that's problem number one. Now here's the number that turns that problem into a full-blown crisis. 30.4 years. That was the average age of their championship squad, making them the oldest team out of all 20 nations competing. I mean, winning by a single point is one thing. Trying to defend that title 4 years from now with a team that's getting close to retirement, that's a whole different ballgame. So when you put those two things together, the razor-thin wins and the aging team, you get what strategists call a burning platform. It's like you're standing on top of a platform and it is literally on fire. You might be the king of the castle, but you cannot stay put. You have to jump. You have to change, even if you have no idea where you're going to land. And if you thought things couldn't get any worse, well, that burning platform was about to get a whole lot hotter. Because their biggest advantage, the secret weapon that got them that trophy in the first place, was about to vanish. So their ace up the sleeve was this tactic they called the bomb squad. Instead of just subbing 1 or 2 players, they'd bring on a wave of 6 or 7 massive, fresh forwards deep into the second half to just physically overwhelm a tired opponent. It was totally revolutionary, and man, did people hate it at first. But then, something totally predictable happened. It's the classic story of any great innovation, right? First, it gets criticized. People called it ugly, said it was against the spirit of the game. But pretty soon, all that criticism turned into the biggest compliment you can get, imitation. Within just a few months, one of their biggest rivals, France, was using the exact same playbook. So now you've got this huge problem, right? What happens when your brilliant, game-changing idea just becomes the way everyone does things? Your unique advantage is just gone. You're right back in that red ocean, and the clock is ticking to find the next big thing before everybody else does. And this, right here, is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Instead of playing it safe and sticking with what worked, the coach, Rassi Erasmus, he chose a different path. A path of deliberate, calculated chaos. He knew that to find what's next, he literally had to be willing to smash the very thing that just made them champions. Think about how gutsy that is. So, in the months after the World Cup, he started experimenting like crazy, throwing in young, new players, trying a totally different, faster style of attack. And let me tell you, the initial results were not pretty. They were ugly. In one game, they raced out to a 22-0 lead and then just completely collapsed in what the coach himself called an embarrassing performance. The media, the fans, they were not happy. But listen to this, because this is the absolute key to making real innovation work. Instead of blaming the players, the leadership owned it completely. Erasmus basically stood up and said, nope, this one's on us, the coaches. This is part of the messy process. He understood that you have to accept these short-term failures if you ever want to create long-term success. So you've got to be asking, was it worth it? All that chaos, the public criticism, those embarrassing losses, did it actually pay off in the end? Well, let's take a look at what happened when all those crazy experiments finally started to click. We'll check this out. Their next huge match against their biggest rivals, New Zealand, ended with a 43-10 thrashing, not a one-point nail-biter. This was a historic, record-breaking demolition. And just to prove to everyone that wasn't some lucky fluke, they followed it up with another monster win, this time against Argentina. Suddenly, all that chaos was starting to look like a brilliant plan. I mean, this chart just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, that tiny little bar, that's the World Cup final. A single point. Then look to the right, that massive bar, that's after the period of calculated chaos, a 33-point victory. They went from just barely surviving to absolutely dominating. So what's the big takeaway here? What can we learn from all this? Well, this whole journey, it's not just a cool sports story. It's actually a perfect real-world blueprint for a powerful business strategy called the 3 Horizons of Innovation. Let's break it down. It's pretty simple. Horizon 1, that's about defending what you've got right now, winning that World Cup, even if it's ugly. Horizon 2, that's making your current advantage even better, like perfecting the bomb squad until everyone else copied it. But here's the magic. Horizon 3, that's doing the risky stuff, the calculated chaos to invent your future while you're still on top of the world. And really, that's the whole ballgame. The easiest thing in the world for them to do after winning would have been nothing. Just keep doing what worked. But because they refused to get comfortable, because they embraced risk when they were at their absolute peak, they've managed to jump out of that bloody red ocean and are already way ahead of the curve for the next title fight. But let's be absolutely clear about something. This was not some preordained success story. No coach, no leader could have possibly known for sure that this would work. It was a genuine gamble, and that's the nature of true game-changing innovation. It always requires a leap of faith. So that brings us to the final question, and this one's for you. Take a look at your own work, your business, your own life. Where are you getting by on a one-point win? What success, right now, might be blinding you to the fact that your platform is on fire and that it's time to start building whatever's next?